Alright, hello guys. Today we are exploring one of the most versatile pieces of training equipment in the hiker's arsenal. And I share how a hiker can best use this piece of equipment to develop their strength, their muscular endurance, their aerobic conditioning, their anaerobic conditioning, and also how it can help your recovery. And I highly recommend getting around this in your training. Now, this piece of equipment, it's not too scary. It's something you probably would be familiar with, and it is the training sled. So more and more people more and more gyms are getting these sleds involved, which is essentially as simple as it sounds. It's just a sled you put weight on and you push and pull it up and down a track or along an oval if you're doing it outside. Absolutely fantastic piece of kit. Many people may be familiar with it, but today we're going to explore in a little bit deeper detail of how you can use it to develop specific aspects of hiking fitness and how you can sort of create your own workouts with it. And yeah, while these sleds are becoming more and more common in gyms, they typically don't really get the praise they deserve. And as a hiker, they can be incredibly valuable. Now, generally when I'm in gyms, you'll see people doing two things. Number one, they'll just be doing sprints on it, where they'll load up a bit of weight and just push until you get huffed and puffed. Or another one, they'll load up super heavy and just push until you more or less collapse. And while these can be good for general conditioning and weight loss and all of that, as I always say, if you can have particular outlines and guidelines on training sessions and you can know exactly what you're targeting, and you can put structure around it, you're going to get much better results. So today, instead of giving you particular workouts you can do on the sled, I'm going to give you some principles that you can follow and some guidelines and templates that you can follow to work particular aspects of your hiking fitness. Now, to start with, I want to talk about strength. So, as you probably know, listen to this podcast, strength is incredibly beneficial for a hiker to develop. However, many hikers out there are hesitant to challenge themselves with heavier weights, which is absolutely fair enough. Most hikers aren't super experienced in the gym. That makes perfect sense. Most hikers aren't loving doing squats or deadlifts or anything like that. And if you're putting yourself, trying to challenge yourself with heavy weights and you don't have the experience or the confidence to do this, it's not a good look, because you might be putting yourself at risk of injury. You might just be doing something you hate, and it's just not an ideal situation. So if you are in that situation where you're not so keen on the heavier weights, but you do want to get strong, the sled can actually be a good answer for strength development. Now, one of the best things about a sled is you can load up quite a bit of load and you can get it really heavy, but you can learn it in about 5 minutes how to do it properly, and it has an incredibly low risk of injury. So while I'll admit it probably isn't as effective as traditional strength development to develop your strength and traditional strength training, whether it's with body weight or weights or whatever it may be, if you're in this situation where you're not 100% confident about the other thing, this can be a really good alternative. And particularly if you've never done any type of heavier strength training, this can be a really good alternative, because you will see some pretty quick results. So if you are looking to develop your strength with the sled, here are a few things you kind of want to look for. Number one, you want to load up the sled pretty heavy. So it needs to be a challenge if you're trying to, get stronger. That makes sense. When you're pushing or pulling, depending on what you're doing, you want to do it with intent. So what I mean by that is, ideally when you're setting yourself up, you want to try and move the sled quite fast. Now, it doesn't matter if you're not moving fast, because it's going to be heavy. You're not going to be moving fast. It's going to be slow, but you want to try to move fast. And that's super important. And that's what I say when moving with intent. And what's that going to do is it's going to stimulate in the body some particular things to really make sure that strength development is moving forward. Now, when you're pushing it, you want to keep the work periods or the sets between 10 and 30 seconds. So relatively short sets, you're only working for that particular amount of time, and any more than 30 seconds, it's probably going to get a bit further away from your strength development. And then once you're done with that, you can have 2 to 3 minutes rest in between sets, and then repeat that from 4, 5, maybe 6 times. Now, really important you follow those guidelines if you're trying to develop strength. Now, if you cut down the rest periods shorter, it can be fine for conditioning, but it's probably going to be compromising your strength. If you do the longer periods of work, again, it's probably going to be fine for conditioning, but it's not going to be great for strength. So that's what you want to follow. 10 to 30 seconds of movement, rest for 2 to 3 minutes. Now, if you're looking, obviously strength can be great there, but sled really comes into its own when you're trying to develop muscular endurance. As hikers know, muscular endurance is so crucial for your hiking performance and just your ability for your legs to go and go and go, whether it's up hills or carrying a heavy pack or whatever it may be. And while this is usually done, with high repetition strength training, so doing lots of squats, lots of lunges, maybe doing hill or stair work, a sled can really be a great option as well. Now, if you're looking at muscular endurance training with a sled, a couple of things you want to follow here is basically you want to load up the sled moderately heavy. So you want to find the sweet spot in the sled where you can work at a pace and work at a resistance, where your legs are burning pretty quickly. So you feel that burn through your legs every single step you take, but you're not getting to the stage where you're getting huffed and puffed. So you're not going super quick where you're getting huffed and puffed, and you're not going you have so much resistance where you're just heaving. But you can sort of go moderately, getting that burn, but you're not getting huffed and puffed. It does take a little bit of playing around with that to get that sweet spot, and it does take a little bit of testing, but eventually you'll figure it out. And then you can either do this workout once you found that weight as either a continuous workout if you're feeling really brave, and you can do anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes if you're doing a serious hike, and that's literally just up and down, working at that pace where you're not getting huffed and puffed, be just fighting through that burn. Alternatively, you might break it up into intervals, and you might do 4 minutes on, have a minute off, 4 minutes on, have a minute off, do that 2 or 3 times, and that can be really great. But when it comes to developing muscular endurance, particularly for those who don't have access to hills or stairs, the sled can be fantastic. The next particular type of workout you might be looking for is developing your aerobic conditioning. Now, we all know aerobic fitness and your aerobic capacity specifically is the single most important aspect of fitness a hiker can develop. And if you want to mix up your standard lower intensity cardio sessions, so your standard walking, running if you're doing that, cycling, stuff on the cross trainer if you're in the gym, whatever it may be, if you want to mix that up and get something that's a little bit different, a little bit more fun, or just have a bit of a change, the sled can be a really good option here. Now, when you're doing this, if you are looking at aerobic conditioning, essentially you don't want to load up too much weight. It just wants to be sort of light to moderate weight, so you can just go and go and go. And essentially you want to be pushing and pulling just for a long continuous period of time, for anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. And that can just be literally your low intensity cardio. Or alternatively, if you didn't have quite as much time, or if you want to work at a slightly higher intensity, you might just go a little bit quicker and work for something like 3 minutes on, 90 seconds off. And so you're getting a little bit huffed and puffed by the end of the 3 minutes. Couple of different options there, but super straightforward. Now, another great option, which many people have probably done if you've used a sled before, is working on your anaerobic conditioning, which is the higher intensity conditioning and getting your body used to that. When it does come to your higher intensity training, the sled can be a really good option. It does allow you to push fast and really go at it, working on very specific hiking specific muscles, and it does have a minimal risk of injury compared to some other options. So for example, high intensity running for many people, hikers in themselves don't really need to run. Some people are quite happy jogging, and that's fine. But when it comes to higher intensity running, many people, it might be not a particularly great option for them. But high intensity sled pushing can be pretty good for most people. Now, if you are looking at using this for your anaerobic conditioning, essentially you're going to load up again the sled to light to moderate weight. So you want to be able to move this pretty quickly. You're going to sprint from anywhere from 10 seconds to up to 60 seconds. So really go hard at it. Then you're going to rest for, whatever you need, and then repeat that. And you're only going to do that for a short amount of time, but go really high intensity, and you will be healing with that. And then one final use for the sled, and something that gets very underused and very underutilized, is using it as a recovery workout, which is, a bit counterintuitive for many, but it can be super beneficial. Now, as we've said previously on this podcast, recovery workouts are really important. If you are doing a big training week, just to help the body recover between sessions, get the blood moving, help the body calm down, work out soreness, and essentially just keep you moving forward, day to day. And the beauty of the sled when it comes to recovery is that when you're moving the sled, whether you're pushing or pulling it, it has minimal eccentric load. Now, when I say eccentric load, an eccentric muscle contraction is basically when your muscles are contracting while it's lengthening. So that'll be on the way down on a squat, on the way down on a lunge, whatever it may be. And these eccentric muscle contractions are where the majority of muscle damage occurs, and that's how we get stronger. We work out and we strain the muscles, there's little micro tears in the muscles like, oh my gosh, I need to get stronger. It repairs and improves. But in our recovery sessions, we don't really want a huge amount of muscle damage. We're purely just trying to get the blood moving, to flush out waste products, to promote recovery and make you feel better. So with this sled, when there isn't a huge amount of eccentric muscle contractions, because you're purely just pushing, it allows you to get those legs moving and get the blood pumping without really putting any extra stress for the legs. So it can be really, really beneficial. So a few guidelines here: you would load up the sled very, very light. You wouldn't be doing anything that's, too strenuous. And you basically just alternate between pushing it, pulling it. You could do some side stepping, some backwards walking, really any other variation you might look at. And you can do this for anywhere from, 5 to 30 minutes, depending on how patient you can be with this. You might look a little bit funny, but it can be very, very effective. So as you can see from all of that, the sled can be a really fantastic training tool for many situations for a hiker. And if you haven't used one before and you have access to one in your local gym or whatever it may be, I highly recommend you get around it. If you do like the sound of this type of sled training, but you don't actually have access to one, whether you don't like training at a gym, whether your gym doesn't have one, or whatever it may be, it can be really simple to actually make your own, and it might be a worthwhile investment. Now, I'm not a handy person at all, but even I can make a sled, so it is pretty straightforward. However, if it's not within your skill set or what you have, find a handy mate. It'll take them 10 minutes, and it's really, really straightforward. But basically, just go into Google, plug in, build a training sled into Google, and you'll find loads of different options. And it can be a really, really great thing. And you just take it to a local oval or down the beach or, wherever, where you can get a bit of flat surface, and it can be great. But absolutely, highly recommend getting around it, or at least having to play. Sometimes it can just be fun, even taking away all those particular aspects of hiking fitness. It can just be a nice way to mix up your training, have a little bit of extra enjoyment, and challenge yourself in a particularly different way. Now, if you were wanting some extra help with this particular type of training, if you weren't wanting some specific workouts, some specific examples, or wanted a little bit extra direction, trying to find how to make your own sled, I highly recommend come join the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. Now inside, I'm more than happy to answer any workout questions you may have, more than happy to give example workouts or any advice which may help. So if you haven't joined up already, it's the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. You can find the link down in the show notes below, and I'd absolutely love to see you there. So thank you so much for listening today, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.